my awesome math students. This is our 3.3 video, and we are going to focus on subtracting integers using two very helpful strategies, additive inverse and absolute value. So we have to review these words so that we know how to use them as strategies. Additive inverse means opposite sign change, and we're going to practice that over and over again until we get really good. Absolute value means the distance a number is from zero, and both of these strategies are really helpful when we are subtracting integers. So let's get started. Here I have given us 4 subtraction problems. If we look at them, what I want you to notice is that the first number is less than the second number, and they're all subtractions. So how are we going to do this? Well, we can use additive inverse. Additive inverse means opposite sign change. And if we look at this first problem, 8 minus 13, I'm just going to write in that that's a positive 13. These two signs right here are what we want to rewrite as the opposite. The opposite of subtraction is addition, so we're going to put that plus sign. The opposite of a positive is a negative, so we're going to write negative 13. Well, what we've done now is we've switched this to an addition problem. So that means that we can switch to using absolute value. I'm going to write in those absolute value symbols. Absolute value of 8 and the absolute value of 13. Now the absolute value of 13 is greater. So we're going to write 13 first, and we're going to now subtract the absolute value of 8. So it's 13 take away 8, and that is equal to 5. But we're not done, because that rule tells us that we have to use the sign of the number that has the greater absolute value, and that would be negative 13. So our answer is negative 5. All right, let's try this again. 12 take away 25. So we're going to write this using additive inverse. The opposite of subtraction is addition, and the opposite of a positive number is a negative number. Now that we've turned this equation into an addition problem, we're going to use absolute value to solve it. So I'm going to write those absolute value signs, absolute value of 12, and the absolute value of negative 25. Well, negative 25 is further away from 0 than 12, so we're going to write that number first, 25, and now we're going to subtract the absolute value of 12. So what's the difference between those numbers? And that would be 13. The sign that you're going to use next to that 13 comes from the number that has the greater absolute value. And negative 25 is further from 0 than 12. So our answer gets a negative sign, and that's negative 13. Let's try this with our next problem. 50, and we're going to subtract 65. 50 take away 65. Well, let's use additive inverse. Let's change it to adding a negative. And now we're going to use our absolute value signs. Absolute value of 50, absolute value of negative 65. Negative 65 has a greater absolute value, so we'll start with that number, and we're going to subtract and find the difference between 65 and 50, and that answer is 15. Go back and look at both of your numbers. Compare their absolute values. Which one has the greater absolute value? Negative 65 is further from 0, so it has a greater absolute value. It's a negative, and so our answer also gets a negative. Negative 15 is the answer. All right, one more problem. 27 take away 33. Additive inverse, opposite sign change. We're going to add a negative. 33. All right, now we're going to use the absolute value. Absolute value of 27, absolute value of negative 33. Negative 33 has the greater absolute value. So we're going to start with that number, 33, and we're going to subtract 27. The difference between those numbers is 6. But remember, negative 33 has a greater absolute value than 27. And because it's a negative number, our answer also is a negative number, so negative 6. Did I lose all of my Now I would like you to try. Go ahead and pause the video and let's compare answers. Remember to show your work. All right, our answers are over here, negative 17, negative 15, and negative 14. But I also want you to make sure that you use additive inverse and that you showed that work by rewriting the expressions. I made the pluses and the negatives different colors so that they would stand out for you. And I also marked the absolute value signs for each problem. Make sure that you have shown your work as well. All right, let's look at these next 3 problems. I've changed these a little bit. You can see that we're still subtracting each time, but we're going to be subtracting a negative number. And seeing a subtraction sign next to a negative sign can often be a little confusing. But if we use additive inverse, it's going to be a lot easier for us to find the answers. So additive inverse is an opposite sign change. So here's what we can do. Instead of subtracting, let's change that to addition. There's the plus sign. Instead of a negative 23, write a positive 23. Look at what we just did. I'll rewrite it. We now have 11 plus 23, and that's a lot easier to find the answer. Our answer is 34. We just had to use additive inverse to do that. All right, let's practice it again. We have 36 minus a negative 8. Additive inverse. Let's do an opposite sign change. Opposite of subtraction, let's make that addition. And the opposite of a negative is a positive. Okay, let's rewrite 36 plus 8. Well, that's a lot easier to solve. So our answer is 44. All right, last problem. Now this one I changed a little bit, and that's because we're starting with a negative number. But notice we still have this subtract a negative. So we know what we can do with that. Instead of subtracting a negative, we'll add a positive. Okay, so we have negative 4 plus 10. I'm going to rewrite that problem. Negative 4 plus 10. Well, we can solve this. We just were practicing these problems. We're going to use absolute value. And I'm going to change the color. All right, so we're going to use absolute value. We're going to subtract the absolute value of these two numbers, and then we're going to use the sign of the number with the greater absolute value. The absolute value of 10 is 10, and that has a greater absolute value than negative 4. 10 is further away from 0. And we're going to subtract the absolute value of negative 4, which is 4. And look at what we did. 10 take away 4 is 6. Now come back here, and I just want you to double check. Which of these numbers is furthest from 0? And that is 10. Notice that 10 is a positive number, so that means our answer is going to be a positive 6. We're going to move on to the last part of our video, and I want you to try. I have 3 problems. Pause the video and then play it again, and let's compare our work. Make sure you show your work too. All right, let's compare. How did we do? Using additive inverse, we're adding a positive, so our answer is 24. Use additive inverse again, add a positive, our answer is 300. I don't know about you, but it helped me to stack those 3-digit numbers to find my answer. And then the last problem, additive inverse, one last time, add a positive, and our answer is 35. Oh, let's wrap up with some math humor. Dude, aren't circles like totally pointless? Totally, dude.